My name is Wally Eaglehawk. I am an author, I'm a sociologist, and I am a book publisher. In 2020, I published my first book, Idol Limerence, and it did quite well. And ever since then, I have been dreaming of writing another book. Now, 3 years later, it's time to write my next book, and I have no idea if I can do it. I always thought the first book would be the hardest because before writing a book, you genuinely have no idea how to write a book. It's one of those things that you have to do in order to really understand and know how to do. I thought that would be the hardest part. But actually writing a second book seems so much harder, and it's something that I've not been able to do for the past 3 years. But now it's time. I want to write another book. I need to write another book. This is how I redeem myself, how I save myself, how I heal myself. Because this whole time I've been chasing this idea of making something of myself, getting to a baseline level in my life where I feel like I'm actually making progress. I haven't achieved that yet. And I've been doing a lot over the past 6 months to get to a place where I'm happier with my life and happier with myself. And the very last thing on my list that I need to do to prove to myself that I can do it and to follow through on the promises that I made myself so many years ago is write a book, another book. How do you write another book in a series when the first book was so big and so popular? And not necessarily, I don't mean popular as in like there's tens of thousands of people that read my book. I just mean that it has a cult following. People feel really strongly for it. And now I've set this bar, this standard that I have to meet. And I don't know if I can. The places that I went to in my mind when I wrote my first book, I don't think I can ever get back to. The way that I was able to push my body and push myself is something that I don't think I could ever do again. So how do I create a second book that is as good, if not better, than my first book? I don't know. But I'm about to find out. There was something about turning 30 that really changed me. It didn't happen immediately on the day, it was a week ago. But as the days passed, I realized that something was different. I was different, and I was suddenly able to do a lot more than I ever thought I could again. I could let go of the resentment I felt for not having achieved everything I wanted to in my 20s. I can no longer say, oh, I'm an award-winning, best-selling author who has worked with BTS before I turned 30. Everything I wanted didn't happen before I was 30, which was this kind of timeline that I'd put on myself and society puts on us, that we have to achieve all of these big things before we're too old. Not that 30 is too old, but you know, it's a pretty big milestone. It's the end of my youth. Like it's over now. It's really over. I thought it was over when I was 20, but it's really over now. So with it being over, I am free. I'm free of not having made it by the time I'm 30. In the year leading up to writing my first book, Idol Limerence, it was like my creativity was a live wire. Everything was amplified, super sensitive, like a raw nerve. And I had so many thoughts in my head and so much creativity, and it was visceral to me. The book that I was wanting to write, Idol Limerence, was visceral to me. I could feel it, I could taste it, and it terrified me. And then once I wrote Idol Limerence, that the live wire was still there. Like, I was sensitive to everything. I could feel all these books coming through me. All I could think about were books. And I was writing. I was starting on 2 new books, and then I had a few other collected works that I was also working on. But then I got sick. And I kept on revisiting these books, two of them in particular. And I kept on trying again and again to be like, okay, this month I'm going to start writing the book. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't get out of bed. I could barely even talk. There was no way that I could write a book. And then over the years, this sensation of being like a live wire, really raw and tuned into everything, that went away. I no longer had the ability to like pull on a book concept or on a feeling or an idea and be like, oh, I can totally feel this whole book, because books are big, right? They're long. It's not saying, oh, I can feel this poem that goes for a few stanzas. No, I'm saying I can feel an entire book. I can feel every chapter, every paragraph. I can just feel it within me. And not just one book, but multiple books. So to lose that feeling was really terrifying, because I wondered if it would ever feel that way again. If it would become so visceral for me. And as the years and the months have progressed, I don't think it will feel like that. I think I have to make it happen to me. I think I have to teach myself what to do again. Because that's what I did at the start. I spent a year researching and writing about BTS before I wrote a book. I did everything, every opportunity that came to me. I said, yes, 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 I will do that. And it took me in many different directions. And it got to a point where I was so full of creative nurturing, especially after I returned from residency in 2019. So many ideas and just this burning passion and desire to write a book, that it happened. So I think I'm now in that position where I was expecting that feeling to come back, but I actually have to make it come back. So there were 2 books. One called Neo Limerence and one called Return to Bangtan. And when I was really sick, I had to make a choice. Which one did I really want to write? And it then became not so much the one that I really wanted to write, but which one could I muster the energy to write? And that's why Neo Limerence got cut pretty early on. I had done the outline, I had started writing it. But because it wasn't about BTS, I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to pull on my reserves of energy. Because the best way to get a creative response from me is to utilize BTS. So to write a book not about BTS terrifies me, because A, I've never done it before, and B, I don't know if I've got the drive, even though I can feel this book and I know I can do it. I'm just worried. I'm worried that I'm still not well enough to write a book. And I'm worried that people won't read this book because it's not about BTS. Even though it's actually part of the same series. But I know that it's the one that I have to write next, and I've known that since 2020, because it was the one that I started writing next. But then I overlooked it, and I went to write Return to Bangtan because it's the big one. It's the one that is going to be bigger than Idol Limerence, right? In terms of the concepts and the emotions and the theorizing and the research and everything. It's going to be like Idol Limerence on steroids. But I couldn't write Return to Bangtan in 2020. Just like I couldn't write it in 2021, 2022, and now 2023. Because the storyline that I want to tell of Echo, I haven't lived it yet. I haven't completed that cycle. I had, for everything in Idol Limerence, I had completed all those cycles. I had lived all those timelines. Therefore, I could make Echo live them. So Return to Bangtan, it isn't ready yet, because I'm not ready yet. But I am ready to write Neo Limerence. So that's the plan. The prequel to Idol Limerence is Neo Limerence. And today is the first day that I'm going to be sitting down and planning it. Because although I planned it in 2020, I wrote the outline, I started writing it, I want to start from scratch. I'm not the same person that I was back then. And it's really uncommon for me to revisit old ideas, especially old books. I've never finished a book that I've started and then abandoned. So in order for me to do this, I have to start fresh. Same concepts, but reimagined. So I'm not going to look at any of my old planning, none of my old writing. I'm going to sit down and see what comes to me. Because it's all in there, right? It's all in my head. I already know everything that I'm going to write. So it's a matter of making the space, setting the intention, and then giving it time to find me. Because as soon as it starts finding me, it will trigger my creative generator response, which is to respond. So as soon as it starts coming in, I'll respond to it. And through that response, it obviously manifests as me writing and me thinking of new ideas and me researching, and then in theory, I'll have a book. I don't know how long it will take me to write. I've planned for 2 to 3 months. It could be shorter than that. It could be longer than that. But it's been 3 years since my last book, so it's time. And I'm not expecting it to be easy. I have to retrain myself. So the only thing I'm really keeping in regards to this book project, apart from the overall idea, is the name. So I came up with this name evidently on the 17th of February, 2020. I'll show you. So I was writing some names down, as you do at 8:33 in the morning. I wrote many different names. I was thinking about Madness of Two at the time, and I can't remember my original concept of what I wanted to explain in this book, but I was exploring what happens when you share, when limerence is shared. Like, can it be shared in I was thinking probably more specifically in a fandom scenario, like can it become contagious? And then I at this point I probably realized that's for a different book, because Neo Limerence isn't about fandom. Though there will be echoes of it. It's not. It's just about interpersonal relationships. So then I wanted to think of, so limerence is not my word, that's Dorothy Tenov's word, right? From her 1979 book, which should be somewhere on my bookshelf. Dorothy Tenov's book, Love and Limerence. As you can see, I have spent some time reading it. Limerence is Tenov's word and work. It's a psychological thing. And for Idol Limerence, I showed Tenov's work, my interpretation of Tenov's work, and then I reimagined it sociologically. I added in, you know, sociological framing, which I think is greatly needed when we're looking at love and romance. And then my real theorizing happened with my conceptualization and theorizing around Idol and what happens when people develop true love relationships with idols, specifically BTS. What I wanted to do with this book is show an updated, more sociological concept of limerence. So Tenov's book came out 1979. She has since passed. And something that is majorly missing, obviously, is the rise of technology and how internet has changed how we relate and how we love and how we have relationships. And of course, plenty of other things have changed in that time as well. So I wanted to do an updated book on limerence. So I wanted a word, you know, so we got Idol Limerence, and I wanted a word, something limerence. To be like, this is new, but it's also edgy. So I don't just want to be like Limerence 2.0, you know, like it needs to be able to convey the concept, the dark and moody and edgy and coming of age kind of concept that I want to put through this book. And so I did like a lot of research on different words and I settled on Neo. So I definitely know Neo Limerence, the title is staying. As for the rest of it, I guess I'm about to find out. I'm gonna sit down and see what comes out. I have to make the space, let it come out, and not rush it. Even though I've just got one day this week to work on it, but I can't rush it. I really want to be able to do this. But I don't feel the urgency that I used to, and that scares me. But maybe I can still create from a place of non-urgency. But that's what my illness took from me, is feeling like I can do anything. So I think I have to teach myself all of this again. I have to retrain my mind and my body. And let my body guide me without pushing too much, because I can't push anymore. Not in the same way. Listen, I can't do a powerlifting competition, cut weight, while writing a book and starting a book publishing company. Evidently, that does not work. I'm different now. I'm stronger, I'm healthier. I do want to write this book. But I don't feel that I would die if I didn't write it. Whereas with Idol Limerence, I thought I would die if I didn't write it, and I thought I would die if I did. So it was a time. But I do often feel that I will die if I don't actually make something of myself. So that's, I don't know if that's good or bad. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, so I don't know. I'm still trying to figure stuff out. So I'm just literally writing what I've already told you, because the act of writing things down, like pen on paper, really does help me, you know, start telling my brain, like, this is something we're meant to be doing right now, we're meant to be thinking, you know, it's turning them little wheels. So talking about it out loud like I've done here, is really important to my process, and then physically writing it down. And then, like, this is my first kind of task. What are the components of Neo Limerence? So the components of Idol Limerence are actually, well, the major themes of Idol Limerence are then what became the chapter titles, and then informed like the flow of chapters and what I'm going to be exploring in what order, and then that then informs the narrative. So I've got to figure out what the components, let's see, components and themes, etc. of Neo Limerence are. And then that will inform the next steps in my process. So I already know that this is going to cover Echo's origin story from about 2011 to 2012. And I want it to feel like a 1975 album, but by me. And I want it to be a bold, in-your-face, experimental reimagining of Limerence for modern times. So this will grow and change over the coming days and weeks, but this is my starting point. Then I've just got to like layer everything else in. Oof. Yeah, it just takes time, but this is an important step. Okay, I'm back. I was doing other things, you know, posting books because I got some orders, and uploading to my stories, which, you know, is important because I need to be able to do things like this, like write down what's in my head, and then I need to be able to go and do something else because that's when the actual thinking will happen. You know, that's when I was sitting there waiting for my stories to upload, and then my brain was still here. So now my next steps I wanted to show you. So, of course, we have Idol Limerence. This is where I want to start. This is like the big book, right? This is where I put all of my big ideas. And I'll explain why this is important. So the chapters from memory, please, I hope I'm going to get this right. It goes love, then limerence, then idol, then persona, then idol limerence, then army, God, I think, then revolutionary, and then inspirance. Okay, so these are all of my big ideas, and the big themes. So not all of these are components of Idol Limerence, but they're big themes, or they're important parts, whatever. It's how I decided to structure my book. So the purpose with Neo Limerence, which is different to what I want Return to Bangtan to be. That's so wild. I just looked up and there was a book that just has like this big freaking number 7 on the spine. This is my mum's desk. It's not. But do you see? It's like the 7. How do people do this to make the focus work? Hang on. Fuck. Hello. There. See that? They're everywhere. And literally, I think, if I open up a desk drawer, somewhere around here, they really are everywhere. Return to Bangtan is like, it's the sequel, so it's Idol Limerence's successor almost. It's like taking everything that we learned in Idol Limerence and adding a whole bunch of new stuff. Like a whole... You don't even want to know. Actually, no, you do. And so do I. I wanted Neo Limerence to be like kind of like a between the books. And by that I mean I want it to be, this is a very unattractive angle. I want it to be a smaller book. And what I want it to be, I want it to take a few themes from Idol Limerence and kind of zoom right in on them, if this is what zooming is. So I want it to take these two, and specifically Limerence, this one, and do a deep dive. And I have a whole bunch of these in between the books planned out, where I take each, you know, theme, and there are more themes than just what I have here within the book, and I expand on them and fully explain them. Because sometimes, like, what's a good example? I wrote in Idol Limerence that these parasocial relationships with personas makes it feel like these people are from outer space. Like, they feel so alien and so bizarre, but like so eerily familiar. And I wanted to write a book called Parasocial Paranormal, where I talk about this more. That's on the very, very back burner. But, you know, like, so I want to take all these little things where I say that Idol Limerence is a safe love. And I wanted to do a whole book just on that. So this is the first of that kind of stuff. But anyway, so now what I need to do is do a similar kind of structure where I figure out the main focus is limerence, and I have to figure out all the other key themes. So of course a large component of limerence is love. So there's love. Don't know if you can see. Yes, love, romance. And then of course there is limerence. So let's say there's 10 ofs. And then mine. Which is the whole point. It's like, why am I writing this book when someone's already done a great job? And who is a psychologist, you know? And that has been a big critique of mine, is that like, well, I'm not a psychologist, so why am I writing about this? So I've got to like show, well, why am I writing about this? Because I'm right, aren't I? But anyway, I digress. I need to show this. But what else is there? What else is there that I want to show? So it is about social media and how that impacts identity and relationships. And I want identity to be, like, identity is a really big theme in this book, but it's mostly in terms of, it's mostly in terms of persona. And I do kind of cover it in the earlier chapters with Echo. Okay. So what else do I want? Whoopsies. I just knocked a whole lot of books off the desk. Love, romance, limerence, social media, identity, relationships. I do really want it to be about romance and the social constructedness of romance, and I do get that into that in Idol Limerence, but I really want to... So back when I was priming to write for this book, I wrote an article that's up on my very old Medium page, and it's called Limerence, A Longing for Love. And I get emailed this, you know, like Medium emails me every week the stats of all my posts, and that article, out of all of the ones that I've written, gets the most views every week still. So it's a love for love itself. So it is a book. A love for love itself, or a longing for love. And it's about becoming. So I really want it to focus on Echo's transitionary period between being like a high school student, dropping out of high school, and then going to film school and becoming like an adult. So it is kind of like coming of age. But like I guess a lot of coming of age books and movies, whatever, are quite gritty, but I want it to be gritty. Like Sunny Coast gritty, like Nambour gritty, and I guess if you're not from here, you won't know what that means. Maybe if you are from here, you still don't know what I mean by that, so I've got to show that. So I think one of the main arguments that I've decided that I want to make with this book that I hadn't previously wanted to make, you know, so this is something that I've been thinking about the past few weeks, is how you can use limerence to transform yourself and to be able to transmute all this pain and longing and yearning into radical self-creation. So that is a lot to do with identity. But what I fear in I have to see how I'm going to put this into the book, because Idol Limerence is already at a set point in Echo's future. So I can only do so much, because where I want the real self-creation to take place is in the book that comes after Return to Bangtan. These will be recurring themes: death, rebirth, etc. But I don't want it to become like, wow, Echo was limerent and she used that energy and that power to completely recreate herself, because my argument is that through that process you then can divest yourself of limerence. So she can't fully do it, because then it comes back in Idol Limerence. So I just have to be careful about that. And one of the things on my to-do list, something that I really don't want to do, I have to go back and read Idol Limerence, because obviously if I didn't write another book in this series, it wouldn't matter, would it? Never would have to read it again. But because I want to make the sequel and the prequel, I have to make sure everything lines up, and that I don't contradict myself, and that I pull all the right threads through, you know, because I really don't like it in books where you can tell they've missed like important opportunities, or, you know, whatever. So I do want it to be about self-creation, transmutation, is that a thing? Transmuting limerence for transformation, or into, I'm just going to go transformation. And I really want to take a closer look. So in Idol Limerence, in Inspirance, the final chapter, I do talk about, because of course, fucking hell, Tenov, I'm going to give up on this lid in a second. Tenov, of course, can explain the psychological reasons why this happens and all of that. But what I want to do is explain the sociological reasons why this is happening. And it is because we are in a neoliberal society. It is because we're in late capitalism or hyper-capitalism, whatever you want to call it. So everything's interrelated, and of course what happens to us sociologically, culturally, in society, of course then impacts our psychological state. You can't have one without the other, which is why I really wanted to fill in the gaps of Tenov's work. Not that she was trying to, you know, create something that was the be-all and end-all. She was just showing her work, and that's great, but I want to show how the two fit together. So I do want to be like a cultural critique of what it means to grow up. To grow up and love and make it in the 21st century, in modern times. Yeah, all right. So I've got to remember that I don't have to go overboard, note to self, on how many different themes and explanations of everything I put into this book, because it is meant to be a simplified version and like a hyper-focused version of the bigger book. So it is just meant to be about limerence. And this is something that I have to teach myself, is that I don't have to put so much into that. I can just keep it, pare it back and refine it in a very elegant and cool way, instead of feeling like I have to throw everything in there, which is very hard. I just have to find that balance. And then what I really want to do is capture the emotion and the feeling. I'm not the strongest fiction writer, but when I write fiction alongside sociological theory and all of my findings and stuff, I'm a lot stronger. And they both help to strengthen one another, I hope. That's just what I think. Yeah. So I really just want it to be a look at Echo's life. And then the exploring of romance and love. And these interpersonal relationships between her and her friend group. Yeah. And music and fashion and parties and gigs and, you know, just paint a really vibrant world, because in Idol Limerence, I showed Echo completely removed, almost completely, 99% removed from everything. Didn't show any of her friends, any of her family. I briefly showed her at work, but it's just her and BTS. And that was done intentionally. So now I want to show the opposite of that. I want to show her in the context of her family, of her friends, her uni, her studying film, her trying to make it, her falling in love, her getting her heart broken, her being limerent. The way that I best operate is doing an outline, a framework. So literally writing the chapter titles, a bullet list of all the themes and everything I want to cover, and then maybe a paragraph explaining what happens. And then I copy paste that into each document, one document per chapter, and then I let it come through me, making sure that I'm hitting all those points as necessary, because I might decide to get rid of them or move some to another chapter. And then it's kind of like, I've described it as a connect the dots. So I create the little dots of the broader picture, but how I get from one dot to another is totally up to me. I don't have to do straight lines. I can do squiggly ones, or I can go to another dot first, but, you know, like, I can decide. So the framework is there, but I guess I get to decide on the actual end picture as I go. So I think, or rather, I hope, I believe, I don't fucking know, that I've started to get somewhere today. And now I've just got to let it sit for a bit. Because, yeah. It's okay to wait. And it's okay to only do a few hours of work at a time. Because then when it's time, it'll really be time. And it will just happen. I didn't want to bring Echo back. But if I'm not bringing back BTS, I'm gonna have to do Echo, you know. Like this whole era of my life that I'm going to draw on to write this, it's so far behind me now, and I processed it all and I healed it all with Idol Limerence. So to go back again, not that I don't want to, or it is that I don't want to, but not in like a reactive, like, oh, I don't want to. It's more like I'm just not feeling any great desire or urge to. And I don't know how much I should force it on. So for now, I'm just going to wait and let Echo approach me. Lay the foundation, lay all the groundwork, and then she can appear to me. Because without her, it's kind of pointless. So I just have to find a way to make it work, and it will. It's just everything's feeling a bit like, ooh, I don't think it can come back. I don't think I can feel that way again. I don't think I can make it happen. But that's just my own fears. I genuinely don't know. So I'm going to explore. I'm going to be open-minded. I'm going to be patient. So yeah. Progress. Progress. I just have to remind myself that I'm doing this to myself, right? This is all self-imposed, and I can stop at any time, but not if I want to live with myself. Okay. Let's write a book. Let's write a book. We're doing it. Okay. Here we go.